Helena never imagined that the pain of losing her only son would be something she would have to confront, not only in her soul, but also in a physical, visceral way. The death of Samuel, her 8-year-old son, was the deepest pain she had ever felt. And, after 8 days of what she believed to be the end, something inside her refused to accept the definitive separation. Her mother's intuition, the instinct she had always listened to, spoke louder than any rational or medical explanation. It was as if somehow Samuel was still there. She didn't know if she was being guided by pain or hope, but something told her that she needed to act. Helena didn't know what to expect, but what she felt at that moment was the urgency to see her son again. The sky was dyed orange and pink. The sunlight was gently parting on the horizon, while the cool breeze swayed the neighborhood's trees. The silence in the cemetery was heavy, and nature seemed to feel the weight of the pain that hung in the air. Helena was there, with swollen eyes, a pale face, and a devastated soul. As Samuel's coffin slowly lowered into the ground, she felt like her entire being was being buried along with him. His heart was heavy, his dreams were shattered. She had said goodbye, but the pain was unbearable, and she couldn't come to terms with the idea that he was gone forever. The wind that caressed her face did not bring relief. It only reinforced the feeling of loneliness that consumed her. The feeling of loss was so great that she could barely process it. The son of her life, the only reason for her happiness, had left, and with him a part of her also seemed to have gone. His eyes were dry, but the pain was an impossible mountain to climb. She wanted to scream, she wanted to fight, but something inside her told her there was nothing left to do. Nothing other than facing reality alone, surrounded by a crowd that couldn't understand your pain, no matter how much they were there by your side. The void in his chest was immense, impossible to fill. Grief swallowed her cruelly, as if she were drowning in a sea of sadness and helplessness. When she got home, she threw herself on the bed, exhausted, wanting to find solace in sleep. But the emptiness consumed her in a way that nothing else could take away. She felt like she was sinking, like her soul had been ripped out and left empty. But what she didn't know was that this pain wouldn't be the end. A chill ran down his spine. Something was about to happen. That's when the dreams began. They started soft, but became more intense, more real. Helena woke up sweaty, her heart pounding, but amid the panic, there was something inexplicable, something she couldn't ignore. In the dream, Samuel was there. His eyes shone with life, and he smiled at her with that sweet, so familiar smile. "Mommy," he said softly, "I'm still here. Don't let me go." The world around her disappeared at that moment. The dream was so vivid that she could feel the warmth of his hand holding hers, like the happy days before the tragedy. She wanted to talk, to hug him, but like sand, he slipped out of her hands, and reality suddenly overtook her. She woke up scared, alone in her bed, but feeling a presence somewhere, as if Samuel were really there. Doubt took over Helena. Was it just a dream, an illusion of pain, or is he really still here? She didn't know it, but what she felt was real. A strong and inexplicable feeling that perhaps Samuel hadn't really left. The emptiness that once dominated his chest was slowly invaded by a spark of hope. She stood up, wiping away her tears, and the thought that haunted her seemed to gain strength. He might be alive. The search for truth was just beginning. The following days were marked by an internal struggle between the pain of loss and the hope that something bigger was about to be revealed. At night, Samuel's dreams repeated themselves, more vivid, more intense. Each one felt more real than the last, with him calling out to her, begging to be rescued. At first, Helena thought it was her mind overwhelmed by pain, but the more she tried to convince herself that this was nothing more than a reflection of grief, the more the dreams intensified. Samuel seemed more urgent every night. "Mommy, come see me. I need you." It was as if he was in a place between life and death, waiting for a rescue that no one seemed to notice. Doubt began to become an obsession. Had Samuel been buried prematurely? Did the doctors make a mistake in declaring him dead? Death was something unpredictable. But still, how could anyone have made such a mistake? She couldn't stop thinking about it. She felt like her son was somewhere, in some state between life and death, waiting to be found. The weight of this doubt began to consume his strength. She needed to know the truth. In a silent dawn, Helena made the decision that would change her life. Not knowing if she was being irrational or driven by an uncontrollable impulse, she got up, got dressed, and headed to the hospital, determined to seek answers. She talked to doctors, nurses, relatives who were present at the funeral, all with a single question ringing in her mind. Was Samuel buried by mistake? The search for the truth became an obsession, but no matter how many questions he asked, no one seemed to understand the depth of his anguish. For days, she toured hospitals, talked to specialists, and tried to find answers, but it all seemed in vain. She felt increasingly isolated, like a desperate mother searching for a lost child. But something inside her kept screaming, "He's still alive!" Each night, Samuel's call echoed in his mind. Maternal intuition guided her, as if she knew there was something that needed to be done. On the third sleepless night, she got up and went towards the cemetery, driven by an inexplicable force. She felt her adrenaline rush through her body, not knowing how or why, but she knew it needed to be there. The city was quiet, and the cemetery gate was locked, but nothing stopped her. With trembling hands, she climbed the railing and descended onto the sacred ground. The moonlight illuminated the path. The shadows seemed to dance as if they wanted to cover their destination, but Helena was not willing to back down. She knew the truth was there, buried, waiting to be revealed. With a shovel in her hands, she began to dig. Every movement was a physical and mental challenge. The earth seemed to resist, as if it didn't want to let the truth come to light. She was sweating, and her tears mixed with the dirt as she dug, moving like there was no tomorrow. Her memories of Samuel invaded her mind with every shovelful of dirt that was thrown aside. His laugh, his sweet words, the way he held her hand with confidence. Each memory gave him strength to continue. Time has become irrelevant. Hours or minutes passed. She didn't know anymore, but finally she touched the coffin lid. Helena's trembling hands opened the coffin, and the sound of the wood breaking the silence of the night made her stop for a moment. What she saw made her take her breath away. Samuel's hand, which had previously been motionless, moved. It was a small movement, almost imperceptible, but enough for his heart to stop for a second and then race with overwhelming force. Certainty took over his body. He was alive. With a cry of relief, she threw herself at her son, holding his hand with all her strength. He was warm. He was alive. Helena, without stopping to think about the consequences, wrapped Samuel in her arms and ran, without caring about the cold early morning wind, her tiredness, or the world around her. She just wanted to keep him safe, warm, and protected. The drive to the hospital seemed like an eternity, but every beat of Samuel's heart, every breath, confirmed that they were still fighting for their lives. Upon arriving at the hospital, disbelief gripped the doctors and nurses. Everyone looked at her without knowing what to do, with a sweaty, exhausted mother hugging the body of a child who everyone believed to be dead. "He's alive! He's alive!" she screamed, her eyes wide with panic. A more attentive doctor noticed the vital signs, and the exam confirmed. Samuel was breathing, although weak, but still alive. The diagnosis was devastating. Catalepsy, a condition in which vital signs declined to the point of being misinterpreted as death. Samuel had been buried alive. Helena couldn't believe it. How did no one notice this? How could they make this mistake? How could she, as a mother, not realize something was wrong? Guilt consumed her as she looked at her son being taken to the ICU. The pain of the mistake seemed greater than the joy of having him back. She had buried her own son, believing he was lost forever, but now he was there, weakened, fighting for his life. Doctors explained that catalepsy, although rare, was difficult to diagnose. Samuel was so weak, with his vital signs so low, that everyone had given him up for dead. He was buried with a medical error that almost cost him his life. Helena couldn't process what was happening. How did no one see this? How did no one act? Every question echoed in his mind, and the pain of guilt was unbearable. As a mother, she should have noticed. She should have done more. In the following days, Samuel's recovery was slow. His condition was still critical, but there was a glimmer of hope. He was alive, and that was all that mattered. Helena remained by his side day and night, monitoring his recovery. With each small progress, she felt more relieved, but the guilt was still there, like a shadow, always following her. During the first few days, Samuel seemed lost, as if part of him still lived in limbo between life and death. Memories of catalepsy and the time he was on the brink of death consumed him. He could not understand what had happened, and his eyes, although alive, reflected an emptiness that could not yet be filled. He would wake up scared during the night, with his eyes wide with fear, and Helena, with a heavy heart, was there by his side, always trying to comfort him. Samuel's struggle was silent but immense. He didn't know how to face what he had experienced, nor how to reconnect with the world around him. He still didn't know how to remember what had been before, and it made him feel lost. But Helena knew that with time, he would overcome it. She wasn't going to give up on him. Never. Little by little, Samuel began to open up. He began to share his emotions, his fears. Through therapy and with Helena's immeasurable support, he learned to deal with what he felt. He began to understand that fear and sadness were normal, but that they would not define him. Slowly, Samuel began to reconnect with life, little by little but steadily. Even with physical recovery, the real struggle was still emotional. Samuel was no longer the happy, carefree boy he had been before. He had changed, but Helena knew that this change, although painful, was part of her journey to recovery. She knew that her love, patience, and time would be her strongest allies in the search for healing. Over time, Samuel began to play again, to laugh again. Although fears still haunted him, he was beginning to believe that he could be happy again. Every day he took small steps, and the relationship between him and Helena grew stronger. She loved him with an intensity that transcended pain, and he began to believe that their love could overcome any obstacle. On the day Samuel turned 9, he looked at his mother with a firm gaze and said, "Mommy, I know you're afraid, but I'm not going to hide anymore. I'm not going to stop fighting." His words, so simple yet powerful, were like a promise of rebirth. Samuel was being reborn, and Helena knew that, with him, she would also be reborn. Their love would be the basis for overcoming the scars that life had left. Time passed, and Samuel grew strong and resilient. The boy who almost lost his life was now becoming a young man with a new perspective on the value of life. On the day of his graduation, Helena watched her son with her eyes filled with tears. He was at peace with his past, and the future looked promising. He had overcome the horrors of the past, and Helena knew that somewhere along the way he had transformed into someone even stronger, wiser. "You brought me back, Mommy," Samuel said with a sincere smile. "You never gave up on me." These words touched Helena's heart in a way that words could never describe. She had known what was really important in life: unconditional love and the courage to fight, not just for survival, but to regain what was lost. Helena and Samuel's journey was not easy, but they went through it together. They were reborn, not like before, but like two human beings who understood each other in a unique way. They learned that sometimes the deepest scars can be the ones that make us strongest. And together, mother and son, they had achieved immortality, not through the absence of pain, but through the ability to overcome it and move forward. If you were moved by this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like and share with your friends. Until the next story.